Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, hey, welcome into Computer America. So today on the show, and let me make sure I have this right because, normally you can trust a Google Doodle, but, excuse me, I want to be super sure about this. Oh my God. Wow, that's a horrible time to get something caught in your throat. Yes, Lunar New Year 2021. So to everyone who celebrates the Lunar New Year, happy that to you. It's, and yeah, that's, just kind of off top because, yeah, hey, you saw the doodle. Oh, good Lord. So everyone, hey, welcome into the program. While I die slowly, just a couple of things before we get started with our guest today with Ralph Bond. We are going to, first of all, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, show notes for today included. We'll have that up sometime after the live program here today. And yeah, you can find everything there at computeramerica.com. While you're there, check out the podcast, check out the articles, reviews, and of course, links to social media and the like. And over on the right side of the homepage of Computer America, you can see a contest. Yes, is our, well, not a contest, a giveaway. Our 30th anniversary of Computer America, 30 years running. And yeah, we decided to do a little giveaway, win hundreds of dollars in prizes and prizes from some of our correspondents and some of our guests on the program, some of your favorite companies. All of them are putting things together for you to win. So there's going to be a lot of winners. We want to make sure we have as many as possible. And you know what? It's going to be a lot of fun. So go ahead and do that. That will be running all month long, and it will be ending at the stroke of midnight on February 28th. So, with that being said, everyone. Oh, and by the way, there's been so much, kind of enthusiasm over that I remember why we used to do giveaways and contests. It was certainly a lot of fun, and I'm sure that there will be more here in the near future. So always keep an eye out for that. Now, with that being said, everyone, I think we should bring on our guest and go ahead and get started here with that. So everyone, a longtime Computer America correspondent, joined us many years ago as a voiceover for our Intel Digital Minute, and he has stayed on as a regular here on the program, and his segment has evolved into the Science and Tech Trends Correspondent, where he finds stories that are off the beaten path, but they're so fun. And hey, he does that every single month for us here, as well as appearances on radio stations, and as well, I was about to say a published author, but the books might be a little out of date because they're tech focused. And yeah, Ralph, I think you know better than anyone, tech does not hold well over the years.
Unlike wine, it doesn't age well.
Exactly. So, but Ralph, welcome back onto Computer America. How you doing?
Hey, great to be with you. Gosh, it's snowing here in beautiful Oregon in the Northwest. We're getting a wonderful winter wonderland thing, which is kind of fun. So that's why I'm wearing my knit cap, partly also to make my background not look weird with the halo, or at least to reduce the halo. I still have some kind of a halo.
Did you see the viral video that went out where the gentleman, the lawyer, was talking to the judge and the cat? I think everyone saw that one.
That was too funny. I almost cried with laughter. It was so great.
It's so indicative though that everyone is kind of forced to use this technology, and not everyone is perfectly fluent in all the programs that we use day to day. But that one turned out very, very humorous, and I'm sorry, and I'm glad that he assured everyone that he was not a cat.
That he's not a cat.
Yes, that was very important. So, with which I guess your legal team, you don't want cats. Now, with that being said, Ralph, before we get started with today's show, how you been? You mentioned a lot of weather. That weather, I have friends down in Texas that say it's going to get down to almost 0 degrees for the first time in years. And they will be within striking distance of an all-time record set back in like 1899.
Oh my, yeah. Well, we're not having anything in the Northwest that's that dramatic in terms of records of weather and so forth. It's just sort of fun for the kids. My grandkids are having a blast going out in the snow and messing around and stuff like that, because we don't get it. We get seasonal, I'll call it attractive seasonal snow, not debilitating snow. So it's really kind of fun for us.
That's perfect. Well, hey, I'm glad that you're doing well and everything is going well. Let's go ahead and jump into today's program.
Great.
So, as I said before, we have a lot of show notes. You have a number of stories. And Ralph, please tell the audience what it is you set out to do with your segment here on the show.
Yeah. So what I try to do each month on this show, and by the way, talking about your 30th anniversary, gosh, I must have been affiliated now with the show at least 15 years or more. It'd be fun to find out when the first time I came on the show. But anyway, what I try to do each month is look for science and technology news stories that are, I hope, hopefully impactful and are not getting coverage in the mainstream press at all, because of course the mainstream press is so consumed with the impeachment and you name it, everything else like that. They just can't cover these things. So it's sort of fun. Some of the stories are kind of quirky and out there on the edge of craziness. Others are really profound and mainstream and may have impact on your lives in the near term. So we put this all together. We have the show notes for each monthly appearance I do, and you can download those show notes and you can get all the links, all the pictures, all that good stuff. And the running joke between me and Ben is we never do all the stories I put together. That's okay, because the show notes will allow you to see and read about the things that we don't get a chance to cover. So check it out.
Definitely. And of course, as Ralph said, he does the highlights, and there's always a little bit more to learn about the stories as well.
Yeah.
But I think you really do a good job of capturing the essence of the story. And I'm surprised because this first story, as you can see up here on the screen, it's not going to be an easy one, because fusion energy, that's been a topic that has been around in science fiction forever, and science fact only in the past couple of decades. And it's, I mean, the promises are amazing. So you chose a big one, story number 1. Let's get started.
Yeah. And this comes from an Engadget by one of our favorite writers between you and me is John Fingus. I've reported on so many of his stories over the many years here. But anyway, headline: fusion energy device sets a record by running for 20 seconds. And maybe out there you're thinking, 20 seconds, big deal. Even I can run a lap for 20 seconds. So what's the deal here? Well, it's very profound, and you'll find out here in a moment. So first, a quick science refresh. And as Ben was alluding to, what I do both in terms of the stories is I give you the ultimate Reader's Digest condensation for younger audiences, Cliff Notes. I mean, it's just extracting the essentials from the story. So it's not the full story. That's why the links are important. You can go out and read and learn more. But a quick science refresh: a fusion energy reactor is a device scientists dream may someday produce electrical power by using the tremendous heat from nuclear fusion reactions. And in a nutshell, nuclear fusion is a process in which the nuclei of atoms are joined. So there's so much more to say there, but we don't have time to get into it any deeper than that.
I think that a good point for anyone out there who is not strictly familiar is think of our sun. That this is the process by which our sun powers everything. So go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very good way to make a comparison. So a fusion device created by the Korea Superconducting Tokamak Advanced Research Team, and they go by the acronym K-STAR. Sounds like a boy pop band, doesn't it? Recently set a world record by maintaining its plasma at a mind-boggling 180 million degrees Fahrenheit.
Is that
for
all?
20 seconds. For 20 seconds. Yeah, is that all? The fusion
crazy.
Device. The fusion device is nicknamed the Korean Artificial Sun. That goes back to your point just a moment ago. Was created by an international collaboration involving the Korean K-STAR team, the Seoul National University, and Columbia University. Hooray, so Americans were involved with this as well. Now, 20 seconds of fusion reaction may not sound like much, but no previous fusion energy device to date has lasted for more than 10 seconds. So doubling that hey, it's a movement in the right direction, right? The research team's next goal is to run nonstop for 5 minutes, and they hope to be able to do that by 2025. Now, it's going to take possibly, probably many decades, but someday, maybe fusion reactors perhaps become practical and join solar and wind as alternatives to fossil fuels. So we'll see. But to your point, it's something that's been dealt with, talked about, fantasized about by the scientific community, and this just marked another important step.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things that it has so much promise because it's not that it would join the likes of solar and wind and that kind of thing. It would absolutely replace, because fusion uses the most abundant element in the universe, hydrogen, and slams them together, and you're good to go. And I guess, Ralph, from my understanding, one of the cool things about fusion is that it gives off more energy than it takes to put into it. Like it's a net positive.
It's mind-boggling
kind of equation. Which, Ralph, when you think about it, it's like every way that we've generated energy here up until this point has always been a negative. You break down coal, you break down oil, you break down you capture the heat from the sun. It's always a net negative, and you're trying to capture, and there's a lot of waste in the process. This removes all the waste, and essentially, everyone, if you want a $0 power bill, this is the answer, because you generate more electricity than you would ever take in, and therefore, hey, everyone gets free electricity. And Ralph, think about the possibilities of, hey, not having to worry about, let's say, your air conditioner having to run all summer long. I mean, it's just, and of course there's, emissions and greenhouse. Well, I mean, I guess there wouldn't be actually, unless they're from like the personal
that's right.
basis.
That's a good question to ask. Yeah. That's something to wonder about there. Yeah. And I think from an economics point of view, what would you make your money on you would make your money on, obviously facilitating these fusion reactor, plants and then distributing the electricity.
Unfortunately, I think this is one of the things where kind of capitalism breaks down, is when you don't have a defined, a source material. Like there's more produced than there is that you put in, and capitalism kind of breaks down from that, because that's not an even exchange. So maybe the way that we pay for electricity just wouldn't work if we had something like this available. A couple things, Ralph, and a little bit of quiz for you. So you mentioned some temperatures here, and I just wanted to see kind of how familiar you are with the Kelvin scale, and what 180 million degrees actually means. So Ralph,
go for it. Tell me. No, you got to tell me.
First of all, do you know what absolute? I think it's absolute freezing is.
Yeah,
on the Kelvin scale.
Zero. I don't have it on the top of my head, but I know what
0
you're
degrees
talking about.
Kelvin. Obviously, 0 degrees Kelvin is absolute zero, and that's where all molecular movement stops, and that's as cold as anything can get. Now, do you know what the opposite of that is?
Oh my gosh, you got me, buddy. Lay it
absolute
on me.
Absolute hot, and this is actually
okay.
described as the Planck temperature, because scientists named Planck actually theorized it. And so now 180 million is 1.8 to the eighth, a 1 to the eighth power, or 1.8 to the power of 8. Now, with that being said, the absolute hot temperature, like as hot as anything can get, and this is recorded, Ralph, in the Big Bang. This is recorded in only extreme parts of the universe. Like think, in the middle of, kind of exploding stars and things like that. 10 to the 8, 10 to the 35. 10 to the 35 Kelvin is, and that's it's 10 with 35 zeros after it. Much hotter. So I know that 180 million sounds like a lot. Considering that's only 10 to the 8, I think, or 1.8 to the to the 8,
as compared to the
as
35,
compared to 10 to the 35.
Wow.
It can go a lot hotter, but it's very cool that they were able to contain this level of heat doing this kind of thing. And I've read so much about magnets and how they're able to control the plasma. There's a lot going in there, Ralph, and I hope to see more. But this is one area where I always hope that the research would kind of finish up before I get too old, because this is still years in the making, but it's awesome to see that they're making progress.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
There's my sides. Story number 1, easy
Good for
peasy.
you.
I'm sure everyone out there is looking forward to that as well. Story number 2, Ralph.
Yeah, story number 2 takes us. We start off with ultra super geeky stuff, and salute to you for adding even a deeper layer of geekdom to it. Now we're going to go to something that's very consumer friendly. So, headline: Get ready for Mercedes and Cadillac luxury cars to feature enormous flat screen displays. I have 2 sources for this story you'll see in the show notes, TechCrunch and Engadget, and we've got the links and all that good stuff, so you can go back in the show notes and go to the original stories for both sources, and there's some great images there as well. But here we go. On January the 7th, Mercedes previewed a 56-inch curved dashboard screen for its 2022 Mercedes EQS sedan. 56 inches. Whoa, called the MBUX Hyperscreen, it will be the company's next generation smart infotainment system that learns the behaviors of its driver. That's interesting. The system features an 8-core microprocessor. The article doesn't identify what microprocessor, and 24 gigabytes of RAM. There's a multifunction camera and a sensor that adapts to the brightness of the screen depending on lighting conditions. That is really cool. And Cadillac, shifting gears for a bit here, no pun intended, Cadillac is working on a 33-inch wraparound display for its 2023 Lyric electric car. And Cadillac's display will be capable of reproducing more than 1 billion colors. That's 64 times more than any other car display currently on the market. So fun stuff to look forward to there. And I think it's just amazing. The only thing that scares me is if that screen goes out, a lot of your functionality, your ability to monitor the car kind of goes out the window. So what's the backup for these things? But anyway, I digress.
Well, and it's kind of funny because just recently, I don't know if you heard about the Tesla recalls that happened about a week ago or so. The Tesla recalls were because of the giant tablet that they have in the middle of their dashboard that would go out. And Tesla fought it for a while, Ralph, because they were like, "Oh, well, it's just the music and kind of the infotainment section of it. Like, it wasn't really crucial for the car." But I guess the way to control, let's say, the heating element to melt the ice on your windshield, for particularly snowy days, Ralph, so that could only function if you could access it from that tablet. And Tesla was like, well, the easiest workaround is get out of your car and do it yourself, scrape your own windshield. And that's what Tesla was saying. But then the National Highway Safety, whatever council, they said, no, that's unacceptable. People need to be able to defrost their windows in icy conditions, which I definitely agree with that. Tesla should not have just said, just scrape it. Yeah, so Ralph, to your point, these things have gone out in the past, and it has been essential functions to cars, and that's when you have recalls and repairs and things like that. So
So what if Ben? What if you could design this thing in such a way that this is purely speculation on my part, but wouldn't it be cool if somehow the screen could be set to go into a transparent mode, and you could have traditional control dials, if you will, or whatever in the background, or you can maybe rotate the big giant screen up and out of the way, and underneath are traditional gauges and such, so that you're not wiped out if you have a problem.
You've always struck me as a belt and suspenders kind of guy that, you always have a backup plan. When it comes to cars and car manufacturing, I know that I've already heard complaints about Mercedes in particular, which is actually funny that they're in this story. Mercedes has a tendency to over-engineer their cars. And I think that would just be, Ralph, to your point, that would just be 2 things to break instead of just, kind of a backup in case one breaks.
But from the mechanic's point of view, that's great, because it's more money opportunity to fix stuff, right?
You say that, but every time I pull a car into the mechanics, you're like, not this one again. And I don't know, it's one of those things. I got to say, I saw this presentation out at CES this year.
Good.
We talked a lot about it. And my comment to, especially the Mercedes one in particular, Ralph, was always that Mercedes is going to have to juggle making sure all the relevant information is in front of you, direction, speed, blinkers, blind spot detection, things like that. But they're also going to have to make it not distracting, because I can see a 56-inch LED screen totally dragging your eye. Like, it's not like they're going to put Netflix, right there in the middle of your car. They need to make sure that the information that you need is there, and then anything that you don't need is out of the way and not to be seen. So
yeah,
it's a fine line. Point. It's a fine line.
It is. It's a tightrope.
Yeah. But I do think this is the way the cars are coming. And Ralph, one last point on this. Have you heard rumors of the Apple car that has since been killed?
Have they killed the rumors?
They killed the rumors. Kia, Hyundai, and Kia were in talks with Apple, and then someone from the inside was leaking information to the press. And I think that Hyundai actually pulled the plug on the whole project because they couldn't keep the information secret. So Apple Car, not going to be a thing as soon as we thought it would, but they're still looking to do that. My point here is, Ralph, that we've talked about self-driving cars on the show. We both know they're coming eventually. What happens when humans don't need to drive in cars anymore?
Oh, well, yeah.
They need something to do. And that's why you see all, Mercedes, that's why you see Cadillac and all these car companies trying to beef up their infotainment system, because I think that, Ralph, is going to be the new business model of cars. It's not going to be, buy the car to use a car. It's going to be, order a car, use an app to, request a car, and then microtransactions, kind of request movies, features, do work, pay for Wi-Fi. The infotainment is going to be the business model of future cars. It's not going to be the car really itself.
Interesting. Yeah. And if I were Apple, and I'm sure they're already thinking about this kind of thing a lot, because I'm not a genius. But let me quickly, I don't want to take too much time, but my daughter has a little Fiat. She has a Fiat car. Its sound system is by Beats Audio.
Really?
Okay?
I did not know that.
What if you have a Cadillac, a Mercedes, you pick your car maker and say, ooh, you can buy a model of this sedan that has the Apple technology in it. Oh, so don't make a whole car, Apple. Get into these things like my daughter's Fiat with the Beats Audio. Well, it could be the Apple, infotainment experience or whatever you want to call it that's integrated into the car. So I'll leave it at that.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's what Apple was trying to do. They were trying to turn Kia cars and put a little bit of spin on it, but make it Apple branded with Apple infotainment system and Apple services built into
I get it.
So
I think that's a smart business model.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So that's definitely what's coming. And I had one more point, but I actually, Mercedes uses Bose, but yeah, that's a whole.
Okay.
So with that being said, story number 2, and again, that's a whole rabbit hole of the future economics of cars. It really is. Story number 3, though, and planes are just these huge guzzling gas tanks. Like, every time people are like, drive less, be more eco-friendly, don't stop on the gas when you are at a red light and things like that. The other side of that equation, Ralph, I'm sure that you've heard these statistics, like 90% of the emissions that happen on Earth are from like giant freight ships, the shipping freight cruisers or whatever, and then the other ones are airplanes. Like, they use so much more, or they pollute so much more than the average car, that your car is almost negligible compared to their pollution. So I thought we were a long way from actually making headway on this, but story number 3 says otherwise.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting trend. And one last comment before we dive into it. In terms of transportation vehicles, who are the biggest culprits? You're right. When it comes to what is the single greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions, buildings. And
really?
You go,
I thought you were going to say cows. I thought you were going to say cows.
Google it. Yeah. Google it. This comes from my 10 or so years with the architecture, engineering, construction division of Autodesk. And I learned this and I just went, what? Yeah, pretty interesting. Anyway, story number 3. Concept for a hybrid electric plane may reduce aviation's air pollution problem. May. And this comes from MIT. It's a news release from them. Got the link, of course, for us. And let's get into this. Jet airplanes emit a steady stream of nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere, which linger to produce ozone and fine particulates. We all know that, I think. Nitrogen oxides are a major source of air pollution and have been associated with respiratory diseases and cardiovascular disorders. Okay, now MIT engineers have come up with a concept for airplane propulsion that would help eliminate 95% of aviation's nitrogen oxide emissions. Now they're talking about, large passenger jets here, folks, not little tiny planes. The concept is inspired by, and I love this, inspired by post-combustion emissions control systems used in many heavy-duty diesel trucks today that scrub nitrogen oxides out of the exhaust. The MIT researchers now propose a similar design for aviation, but with, I love this line from the article, but with an electric twist. As we all know, today's jet airplane engines house a gas turbine that powers a propeller to move the plane through the air as exhaust flows out the back, of course. However, due to how the jet engines are designed, integrated emissions control devices like those in trucks would not work, as they would interfere with the thrust produced by the engines. In the new MIT hybrid electric design, a plane's source of power would still be a conventional gas turbine, but it would be integrated within the plane's cargo hold. You got to let your mind kind of grab onto that for a second. Rather than directly powering the propellers, the gas turbine, so it would be still run with traditional aviation fuel, okay? So the gas turbine would drive a generator also in the hold or body of the plane to produce electricity, which then would power the plane's wing-mounted electric engines. The emissions produced by the gas turbine in the hold of the plane would then be fed into an emissions control system like those in diesel trucks, which would then clean the exhaust before ejecting it into the atmosphere. So it's all, you go boing. What I would want to know is how much space in the hold or fuselage of the plane would this kind of system take up, because you've got to have space for cargo and luggage and all that kind of stuff. So those are a few questions, but salute to MIT for at least thinking about this and saying, wait a minute, here's a technology that works in big freight trucks. Could it be adapted for airplanes? And they're saying, yes, you could do it. Again, is it practical? Is it cost effective? TBD.
Right. There's and I definitely like the idea of a generator being fed inside the plane, and then of course the emissions being scrubbed and the propellers being electrified, all that kind of thing. My initial reaction to all that, though, Ralph, is, the average age of a plane in the U.S., at least, according to like U.S. Airlines, the average age is 12 years old. Some of them can be 20, some of them are, 5 or 6 years
much
old.
Older.
Yeah. And and all the time you see 25, 30-year-old planes flying perfectly fine. It would take decades to revamp. And like you said, Ralph, you can't retrofit existing planes. Like, you would have to redesign planes and how they fly and how they look.
Right.
This is not a retrofit. But I like the idea, though. It's turning a plane into more like a diesel vehicle. And that's
it's clever. And I learned something, too. I didn't know that big rig diesel trucks very often have these kinds of systems. I didn't know, and I love that part of the story.
I knew they did from a particular news article that if anyone out there is interested to see one of the biggest mess ups that's not Mercedes, BMW, I think it was BMW, and that BMW ever made. It had to do with the whole emission scandal back in 2018, Ralph. I don't know if you're paying attention to that, but it happened in the Eurozone, and they had all these things to reduce emissions, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they were cheating the test. Like, the computer could sense when it was plugged into the testing equipment, and it would change the readout. That is the system that they're talking about here that normally would be working perfectly.
Interesting.
But yeah, that was that whole mission scandal. So that's how I knew that they did that kind of thing. But I digress. That's a whole nother thing. Story number 4, and this is actually relevant because all month long I've wanted to do, and I probably still will do, prominent Black figures in tech history, because Ralph, so many times we've heard about kind of tech and high tech is not a very diverse scene. There's a lack of women. There's a lack of African Americans. There's a lack of really anything that isn't white male or Asian male. There's a real diversity gap, I think, between the average workforce and the makeup of America and what happens there. So I've wanted to do feature stories of prominent, kind of people of color in tech, and you beat me to it. You beat me to it with story number 4.
Well, yeah, and there's so much more to tell the story. By the way, as you know, I worked for many years for Intel Corporation here in Oregon, and just a few miles from where I'm talking to you right now, the gigantic Ronler Acres and Jones Farm and Hawthorne Farms complexes for Intel, blah, 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 blah. Yes, it was whites, it was Asian Americans, and Indian, not Indian Native American, but Indian folks were the kind of the main ethnicity mix that I would see over there. A very few African Americans, unfortunately. I don't think I ever ran across a Native American in the mix of people I worked with, but you make a good point, and that's why it's so much fun to kind of highlight the work and achievement of African Americans.
Because they're there. They just
they are there.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So this is another story, and yet another one from MIT, a news release from them. And the headline was, "A Black Computing Pioneer Takes His Place in Technology History." It's a fun story. There's a great picture in the show notes here. Take a look at that. As this is Black History Month, as you mentioned, Ben, I thought this was a wonderful tribute to an African American who played an important role in computing history at MIT. So here's the story. In 1951, it's 1 year before I was born. That's how old I am. In 1951, high school graduate Joe Thompson, then 18 years old, was trained as one of the first 2 computer operators at MIT. What? As one of the first 2 computer operators at MIT was an African-American young man. The computer was the Whirlwind, the prototype for the Sage air defense system. Whirlwind was the first digital computer able to operate in real time. Isn't that interesting? And the first digital computer at MIT. MIT's Whirlwind was one of the earliest high-speed digital computers, and Thompson played a key role in its operation at the start of his decades-long career in computing. In an interview decades later after he started, Thompson noted, quote, "They at MIT were looking for bright, young kids who were not going to college." Can you imagine some of his capabilities not going to college? But anyway, that's what he said. He goes on to say, "I was the first operator to see if that would work. And I guess it worked well. You had to learn the whole system, and you had to get to the point where you understand what they're doing." Wow, any 18-year-old kid. I mean, that just blows my mind. After Whirlwind, Thompson accepted a job with RAND as a programmer working on the Sage air defense system software. He transferred to California with the company, and his group eventually spun off into the nonprofit System Development Corporation. And Thompson retired in the 1990s after 4 decades in computing, and unfortunately, he passed away in 2015. So salute to him. But I do have a little side note you can see in the notes here. I wanted to stress this, also very pertinent to Black History Month. If you have not seen the film Hidden Figures, have you seen this movie, Ben?
I have not, but I've seen it referenced so many times that I feel like I have.
You would love it. You would love this movie. Anyway, if you've not seen the film Hidden Figures, I'm jokingly say here, run, don't walk. It's so great, folks. It's all about, and if you think, oh, it's about science and it's going to be boring, and no, it's all about 3 brilliant African-American women at NASA, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, who served as the brains behind one of the greatest operations in history. We're talking about mathematics, folks. Their calculations, the launch of astronaut John Glenn into orbit. Now, I'm old enough to really remember John Glenn. A stunning achievement that restored our nation's confidence in the space race and turned around space race. Yeah. And there's more here. I've got a link. You can learn more about the movie and these amazing women. It is a wonderful, wonderful movie. And just a side note here, I'm old enough to remember going to the northern part of Florida and seeing the colored drinking fountain, the coloreds only entrance, the coloreds only beaches, that kind of stuff. Oh my goodness. I remember this. In this movie, it's heartbreaking because they had NASA at the time had, whites only bathroom, colored bathrooms. They had that kind of segregation, which is a sad part of our history. Of course, part of the movie is how the director at the time eliminates that once he becomes aware of the problem. But it's a movie that has many layers in addition to the technology. So please, folks, in honor of Black History Month, rent and watch Hidden Figures. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, and there's and this actually speaks to another segment I've been thinking about, but getting it together just seems like such don't get me wrong, the payoff would be great, but there's a lot of people in technology that are still with us today. People who have, I think the idea came like 6 months ago, Ralph, when I think the inventor of the mouse, and it may have been the mouse or something like the USB flash drive or something like that. That gentleman passed away. And I was like, the fundamental kind of underpinnings of consumer technology as we know it. Those guys are still here. A lot of them are still alive and more than happy to share their story and, kind of the development of the modern day computer, the mouse, flash, memory, RAM, so on and so forth. This article that you had here where you showed the picture, like this picture just is awesome to me with these two gentlemen, because essentially, like, imagine these guys, like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of size. They're essentially standing inside of a computer that you're probably using today, like
on your wrist.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what they're doing. So my point is that a lot of these prominent figures in history, not just people of color and things like that, but a lot of the tech history that that you think is maybe a little bit out of reach. No, they're still living somewhere, probably in Florida, and just relaxing. So I always wanted to get them on the phone and interview them. Before unfortunately you can't. So
amen, brother.
There you go. So hey, maybe a segment for another time. But story number 4, story number 5, please.
Yes. You know me, I have a soft spot in my heart for medical technology advances, and this is a really good one from medgadget.com. It's an editorially staffed written story. The headline, Nano Droplets and Ultrasound to Drill Through Blood Clots. Blood clots. Penetrating compacted blood clots is a challenge for vascular surgery. No duh. Various miniature catheter-based devices are in use today, but many patients have clots that are just too difficult to break up, even for the finest miniaturized existing catheter devices. So that's the setup here, folks. Now, drum roll, happy news. Researchers at North Carolina State University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill have developed a new way to attack blood clots that involves special nano droplets and an ultrasound catheter that activates them. Ben, you're going to love how this works. The nano droplets are made out of lipid spheres packed with low boiling point liquid perfluorocarbons. When the perfluorocarbons are released from the spheres in the vein, of course, their extremely small size allows them to get into the tiniest crevices within a clot. And the illustration from the article helps kind of picture this. Once these little, nano droplets are in there with the perfluorocarbons, once they're, a shower of ultrasound activates them to become expanding, boiling microbubbles. What? Then additional ultrasound is applied to make these boiling microbubbles, wait for it, vibrate, and then safely break apart the clot mass. So this is potentially a huge, huge advancement. So exciting. I'm so glad it's coming from some American universities in their research. Good for them.
And I was just trying to think, where have I heard the term perfluorocarbons before, other than high school, because I definitely didn't pay attention then. But Ralph, I believe that was the same thing that used to be in kind of like whole home deodorizers and things, or like aerosol cans, and that was the thing. And of course, that depleted the ozone layer and made that hole there. But I think using it in someone's bloodstream is probably pretty easy because it gets filtered out and that kind of thing.
Right. And we're talking about such a minuscule amount as well.
Yes, that too as well. So there's no risk of at least that other way that we've heard about these. But still, boiling microbubbles that then just bombard a clot. Man, and I'm sure that someone was having themselves a very good day. I'm sure that this research is built on other research, but
of course.
I hope it works out well, because the idea of boiling things in my blood makes my blood boil. No, okay,
makes my blood boil. You've given a whole new meaning to that. I love it.
I sure didn't. But the nice folks over at the Carolina universities, they
Yes. I could see future physicians saying, Mr. So-and-so or Ms. So-and-so, we're going to make your blood boil. What?
Yeah. well, and of course, mix that with, and of course the application method, if you're watching the video portion, you can see a little catheter with like a little resonator there, being able to, propel these things.
Right.
Man, Ralph, medical technology, like, this is going to be another one of the stories that I kind of remember, talking to you, Ralph, and I'm going to be like, remember that story a year ago where, you can actually like boil away blood clots, and it's advancing all the time. And hey, hopefully these major, my girlfriend's father recently went in for surgery on his heart, and actually one of his arteries. I guess it's called like the Widowmaker artery, something like that, Ralph.
I've forgotten which one. Yes, I know that. Yeah,
and it was like 90% blocked or 85% blocked, and they did some immediate surgery, and they were able to get in there, and they cleaned it out, and he's doing well. But man, like the precision and the amount of effort that goes into it, I'm hoping, again, by the time I need something like that, if hopefully I never do, but robots can just kind of crawl in there and just take care of it. That's what I'm hoping. And we're getting there. So
it is, like I've said at the outset, medical technology is very near and dear to my heart. No pun intended. It's cool stuff.
Definitely. And speaking of crawling in there and fixing things, maybe your next colonoscopy could be story number 6. Ralph, what's up with story number 6?
Next colonoscopy. That's too funny. A miniature version of our next story. So, folks, what we're talking about and chuckling about. Story comes from CNN headline. This snake robot will fix pipelines on the ocean floor. Now, in this case,
it's the same process.
It kind of, I get where you're going, but anyway, this is really cool. The illustration and the videos for this are really fun. I love this. So here we go. Thousands of miles of deep sea oil and gas pipelines must be inspected and repaired regularly. Well, sure. Folks, today that's done by boats on the surface, sending down all kinds of, cables and messy stuff, or oil rigged like platforms having to, it's a mess and it's expensive. So now, there's a new cutting-edge underwater robot being tested that could make this task safer and much, much cheaper. And I love the fact you're showing the video right now because it's so compelling. Developed by the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, the new Elume, that's ELUME robot, is a nearly 20-foot-long, flexible, snake-like robot outfitted with a camera, lights, and sensors at each end. And the video shows this so well. A series of fan propellers moves the robot, which also features a wireless video communication system. Now, the robot can work autonomously on tasks assigned from a control room on shore and send back live video and data. And its snake-like design, Ben, you're going to love this. Its snake-like design allows it to work in confined spaces. It can even twist its body to stay in place in strong currents. Wow.
Very cool.
It can also perform an arch-like or U shape to inspect all sides of a seafloor floor pipe at one time. It can be recharged and housed in a docking station, which the video shows, at depths of up to 547 yards for 6 months without being brought back to the surface for maintenance. The robot can travel up to 12.4 miles before needing to be recharged, and it can even swap out parts. The video shows this really cool. It goes up to this kind of panel and pulls out different parts like a grabbing tool or whatever. But one of the parts it can have is cleaning brushes to remove marine growth and sediments. So very, very clever robotic technology. And I just thought this was so unusual and interesting.
And of course, this being developed by a couple universities and not actually a thing to be sold yet. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, what we currently do, Ralph, I guess, is not. It's not really sustainable. Like it's very expensive to have these underwater facilities, and especially having oil rigs, I guess, on top of the the oil rigs and of course the pipelines as well.
Yeah.
Having them down, above surface is an eyesore, a danger, risk, a hazard. That's just more pipeline that you need to run.
Right.
These snakes, though, are creepy. Like when you were watching the video, what was your reaction to, I guess, just seeing at least the render of it?
Kind of like eels or something. I mean, it just,
yes.
But I just thought it's so, the fact that the thing, I want to emphasize one point that we talked about in the story. I wonder if there's a lot of AI involved, because I wonder how does the device realize, oh, I'm in a current situation where if I twist my shape like so, I can sustain myself in a strong current situation. If you think about all the physics and things going on in a underwater current situation, being able to twist the shape of the device or the snake-like robot to counteract those current pressures. Wow, I would love to know more. And maybe somebody, if you want to dig some deeper into this and let us know, that'd be cool. But wow, all I can say is wow.
Artificial intelligence is that catch-all, thrill phase that's saying, wow, that sounds really complicated. Hopefully machines can learn how to do it so we don't have to. And it's a very innovative, I guess, design. And Ralph, I think that over the last couple of years, we've seen that robots are not going to look like the Terminators and, the other robots that we saw in like the 80s of like Short Circuit and so on and so forth. Robots are going to take all shapes and sizes. And I guess eels is a pretty good way to do it, at least underwater. So very, very cool. And Ralph, I don't know if you saw in that video, and it probably has nothing to do with how it actually works, but one of the eel snake-like robots was actually longer than the other. And I'm wondering if they said they can like swap out parts, and you saw that they could, kind of swap out the ends of each other. I'm wondering if they could be longer or shorter depending on what task they're trying to do. And they could, I guess like we saw ones that were like 5 or 6 sections in the video long. I'm wondering if they could even go all the way up to like 20 sections, and they could do even larger, like
daisy chain them.
Yeah, exactly. And they could like adjust their length as well. I don't know. There's a lot of possibility there.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Okay, so story number 7, and I think this is a good one. We covered a couple of these, although the smart mask that made the most, that got the most attention at CES, I think was Razer had one, the one that makes like the gaming equipment, Razer, and then there was another one that was clear and see-through, so that you could, kind of see things. But that's picked up on a couple of different ones. So real quick, we can do story number 7.
You got it. This comes from USA Today. The headline was "Smart Masks for Our COVID-19 Lifestyle" unveiled at the recent Consumer Electronics Show. And sometimes I paraphrase the headlines, folks, to make them a little more pertinent for our audience and our situation in a radio broadcast. So here we go. At the virtual online International Consumer Electronics Show held last month, as we all know, a number of innovative high-tech smart masks were announced, as Ben was just saying. There are many. But here are 2 examples that were highlighted in this article. One is the AirPop Active Plus. It's a smart mask featuring a sensor that measures the user's breathing data and the air quality of their surroundings. The Bluetooth-enabled sensor in the mask works together with a smartphone app to track breathing data, filter efficacy, and the pollutants blocked by the mask filter. The AirPop Active Plus mask will be available at select retailers sometime this year, for $149.99. So when you look at what it's designed to do, it's probably for very specialized occupational situations where air quality and pollutants and so forth are a key thing that you need to know and have data on, maybe to warn you to stay out of an area or something like that. That's one of the reasons why I think this mask is costing $149.99. It's pretty sophisticated in those areas. But let's switch gears and go to one that in the article that I thought was really attractive. I'm tempted to get it myself, mainly because the price point's approachable. So it's the Hubble Mask Phone. That's Maskphone. Takes it a step further. Not to say that the previous mask isn't great, but it's a different concept here. It's doubling as both a mask and a Bluetooth wireless hands-free headset for your smartphone. Think of how many people, for occupational reasons, need to be able to communicate with their smartphone at any time, all the time. But you can't, take your mask off, fooling around with that would be just terrible. So the mask features a medical grade N95 filter. That's cool. Built-in wireless earbuds and a microphone, so users, can take calls hands-free. In addition to calling, you can listen to your smartphone's music. No surprise, because it is linked up with your smartphone. And there are embedded, this is the part I like. Look carefully at the picture, folks. There are embedded touch controls on the side of the mask to adjust volume, play, and to pause music. Classic controls, right? But they're right there on your mask. It's available now at retailers, including Amazon. You can go out to Amazon and check it out. $49.99. And the Mask Phone folks offer a pack of 5 N95 grade replacement filters for $19.99. So I don't know. I just love this. I'm sure they're not alone, but I just love this idea for so many people working in store situations or working out in the field where they need to communicate and don't want to be pulling their mask on and off or trying to stick their phone up to their head and with the mask. How cool it would be just keep your phone in your holster and be able to just use your mask as your headset and so forth. I love it.
Right, yeah, and I was looking at this and I wanted to see some of the reviews for it, because if it's available, that means people are using it. A lot of people seem happy with it. Not seeing really any 0-star reviews, so that's at least a start.
Are you out on the Amazon site?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I did that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people are saying that maybe the noise cancellation for being they market this as an athletic mask as well. So yeah, they're saying like the noise cancellation. Yeah,
for $50, you can't expect Bose noise cancellation.
Well, no, the reviews are actually good, and that's what I was concerned about. Like, I was concerned that they were grabbing headlines with taking advantage of like the COVID-19 press, but it seems like they actually put out a working product, and that's what I was kind of concerned about. Cool. So yeah, and very cool that you could even go get one yourself. That's not much on Ralph's show notes or something that you can go out and play with yourself. Not like you can go down to your local fusion reactor and just see what's up. No, that's true. But this is one of them. And although I do have to say that, no, it's fine. If anyone out there was having trouble with this link that you have here, Ralph, I don't know what happened with it.
Oh, sorry about that.
It says blocked, but ladies and gentlemen, if you just copy the link, just right click and copy the link address, and then you go over here and you paste it, and then go there.
Oh, you know what? It worked for me. The link worked for me.
I have no idea why. Just for me.
That's odd. I just tried it, and I'll try it again here.
All right, so it works for Ralph. For me, it says it's blocked, which is something I've never seen before. I don't know why USA Today is blocking that.
Maybe they don't like you for some reason.
They have reason to. I've taken issue with a couple of their stories. So Ralph, we're going to go ahead and do. Not story, because I think I actually covered story number 8 in a previous show.
Okay, you got it.
So let's talk a little bit about story number 9, and then we'll wrap it up with one more story. So story number 9.
Right. Yeah. So I know we have limited time, so let's jump into the story 9. Invisible solar panels. What? How tomorrow's windows will generate electricity. This is from SciTechDaily.com, a great source. It's from a press release from the Incheon National University. So there's a link here. There's a great picture, which is cool. Recently, an international team of researchers at the Incheon National University in South Korea demonstrated the first fully transparent solar cell Let that sink in for a second. At present, the materials that make a solar cell opaque are the semiconductor layers, which capture light and convert it into an electrical current. Okay, I mean, we all know that. The researchers developed an innovative technique that rests on a specific part of the solar cell, the heterojunction, made up of thin films of materials responsible for absorbing light. By combining the unique properties of titanium dioxide and nickel oxide semiconductors, the researchers were able to generate an efficient, transparent solar cell. The idea of transparent solar cells is well known, but this novel application, where scientists have been able to translate this idea into practice, is a crucial new finding. And as an added benefit, the titanium dioxide and nickel oxide materials used yield eco-friendly solar capture solutions. And I wish I had more details on that. There may be more in the article on that last point, but that's cool, right? And it's, we're in the development phase, folks. This is just an initial announcement of this breakthrough, so we'll see how it goes from there.
The efficiency of cells is always something, and I think that, transparency is great and all, but the thing that's really going to make solar take off is a boost in efficiency. And even if it looks cooler, but it's not as efficient, unfortunately for now, that puts it a little bit far beyond. But hey, the generation afterwards, Ralph, every transparent window being a source of energy, that is something to really look forward to. Ralph, okay, so we're going to skip over story number 10. I like it, but I'm a little suspicious. And Coda, if you're out there listening, this quote that you extracted here just puts out too many alarm bells in my head. A quote, blockchain enabled decentralized AI infrastructure. They hit every buzzword they possibly could and threw it all together. That doesn't actually mean anything. So we're going to skip over Coda just a little bit.
All right, you got it.
Yeah, but I did, and of course the Venus flytrap is very, very cool. I like that too. Electric car is great. Ladies and gentlemen, all these are stories that you can read more into if you go over to the show notes. But story number 14 seemed like a good way to wrap it up by saying, we reference, heck, I didn't even know the story was coming up because I do my due diligence and read everything Ralph sends, but I didn't even know the story was coming, Ralph, and I referenced Terminator. Terminator is like part of the tech, I guess, kind of nomenclature, because it is the, it is the dark side of technology. It is what could eventually happen to Terminator. There's Skynet and RoboCop and all that kind of thing. Like it is the dystopian future of technology, and everyone thinks, well, it's just that. It's just fiction. But story number 14 brings it into question.
It does. This comes from Gizmodo, and the headline was Congressional Panel. We have a moral imperative to at least consider building a Terminator. Now, that headline's a little inflammatory because...
So is the picture.
Well, yes, of course they take the Terminator. I love those movies. Anyway, the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, which is a congressional advisory panel that met in January, considered whether or not the U.S. should deploy artificially intelligent autonomous weapons. The key here is AI autonomous weapons. And after taking into account the numerous reasons it would be a terrible idea, the panel, decided that at least toying around with the idea is a, quote, moral imperative. The two-day panel, which was chaired by Google CEO Eric Schmidt and vice-chaired by former Deputy Secretary of Defense Robert Work, opposes the U.S. joining an international coalition of at least 30 countries that have urged a treaty to ban the development or use of autonomous weapons.
Ralph, we now know why Google has dropped "Do No Evil" from their terms of service. They're working on Terminator.
There it is. Instead, the panel advised Congress to keep their options open. Critics have long pointed to the inherent dangers of AI-controlled weaponry, which include everything from glitchy or trigger-happy systems kicking off violent skirmishes that would turn into bigger conflicts, and the possibility such systems could be acquired by terrorists or subverted against their masters by hackers, or the robot tanks and drones would decide to massacre helpless civilians. The congressional panel instead concluded that killer robots potentially being really good at killing is actually a reason not to rule them out. The logic goes that perhaps autonomous weapons could be much more discriminating in their target selection and thus somehow kill fewer people. The panel suggested that an anti-proliferation treaty may also be more realistic than an outright ban. It just caught my eye, needless to say, and it raises so many issues you alluded to that really make you stop and think.
Well, and it might have been the last show or the show before that. We actually already talked about a killer robot, Ralph, and that killer robot was actually a type of drone. And if you recall, it was the Air Force doing skirmishes against an AI powered plane. And it was the first time that an artificial intelligence in a jet fighter was able to defeat humans in a jet fighter, because there's so many variables to take into account, in a tactical dogfight. But essentially, Ralph, we all, Google's Eric Schmidt sees it, the U.S. Department, the Department of Defense sees it. Everyone sees the writing on the wall. The military sees AI just like every other tech company. It's an asset and something that is going to be used one way or another. So it's coming. I just hope that it does. and like I said, I hope that's some sort of anti-proliferation. I'm not going to comment on whether or not it's actually going to be so good at killing. It's only going to kill the right people, because that seems like a flawed argument to begin with. Man, that's... ladies and gentlemen, we could have ended on a more hopeful note, but that's okay. It was a lot of fun, and it always is, Ralph. So, Ralph, if people want to find out more, where can they go?
Oh, just come out to just Google me, Ralph Bond, and look for the reference to this show and KEX. You'll see the link and pop out, and you'll see my website. I'll have the show notes, as well as I know you will too. And away we go.
Yeah, and right there, Ralph Bond, right in Google, and that's the first website that pops up. You're good to go. Everyone, until next time, again, enter the contest, enter the giveaway. It's going on all month long, and Ralph, thank you again. We look forward to next month as well. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Oh, and happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Bye.